Did Sarah Sanders post a doctored video? Let's see what we can see. For those of you who aren't aware of the context, a few days ago, President Trump held a press conference at the White House, during which one of the reporters, Jim Acosta, entered into some sort of debate with him. I haven't looked at that actual debate or those questions or what he asked, so I'm not sure what in particular they were talking about. But during that back and forth, Trump apparently indicated that Jim should have his microphone taken away from him. So an intern went to get the microphone to take it to another member of the press who was wanting to ask a question. Jim refused to hand over the microphone, and there was I wouldn't call it a tussle from what I've seen. He effectively resisted her attempt to take the microphone. There was physical contact. Afterwards, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, posted a video of the incident, stating that Jim Acosta would have his press pass revoked. Not long after this, claims surfaced on Twitter that the video that Sarah Sanders had posted had been altered to make Jim Acosta's actions seem more extreme. So I'm going to take a look at some of this and see what I can figure out. I'm by no means a video expert. I've actually just saw this as a kind of an exercise to try and learn a little bit about this. But I have seen some things that I think are interesting and are worth commenting on. So let's start with the video itself. Here we see the incident. The video from Sanders then shows it again a few times with a close-up, and then 4 more times with a repeating even closer up. One of the first videos to appear claiming that this was a doctored video was by a Slate journalist named Ayman Ismail. I hope I've pronounced that name correctly. He shows some footage side by side, making some statements that appear to show that the videos are not the same. I'm not sure I entirely agree with his statement that the intern's hand reaches the mic first in the original clip. We'll look at that a bit later on. But the first thing to note is that this is not the original video. This appears to have been taken from somewhere slightly to the right of the video that Sarah Sanders posted is based on. This angle is slightly different, and so some of the movements will appear different. You can tell this because these faces are visible when later on they are not. Later on, Ismail posted another video. This one uses the correct original. As you can see, the faces that were shown in the other video are now behind Acosta. He shows the video at various speeds, and the key part here is where he mentioned the main argument behind the idea that this video is altered, namely that frames have been added, as he says, to accelerate the chop. And as we back up, we can see the video on the right does appear to stop and stall. There are some problems with doing a full analysis using this video. The first is that this video is actually 24 frames a second when the originals are 30. And so it can be hard to tell exactly when things are moving. in each video. The other is that the zooms don't quite match, and so where you see a much more pronounced drop in the right hand side, this is because the zoom is closer. So I downloaded the original videos from Twitter. I've put links in the description, so you can go and find these yourselves. One of the first things I did was I cut out the clips of the two close-up shots. On the left-hand side is the original C-SPAN video, zoomed in to attempt to match the zoom shown in Sarah Sanders' video. On the right is the press secretary's video. The first thing to note is there's a slight colour difference. The colours are more faded on this side, but I don't think that should matter too much. It may indicate a clue as to the original source of this video. But for now, let's step through and see where we get. The clips begin synced up, so as we step through, the intern reaches for the microphone, and Jim Acosta's arm or hand appears to touch her elbow here. I would say at this point the intern is very close to the mic, but she doesn't quite have a hand on it yet. Now the next thing that's important to note is that there is certainly a freeze at this point in the Sarah Sanders video of 2 frames, at which point both videos continue. But now the right hand video is 2 frames behind. This appears to continue for the rest of the video. You can see in this frame on the left hand side, Acosta's hand has now broken contact, and it is not until 2 frames later that the same happens on this video and also here. So it appears that the essential change in this video is this 2 frame delay. As the key difference appears to be these extra frames, this should be simple to resolve. As you can see, frames 21 and 22 are duplicates of frame 20, so we can cut these out. I would recommend doing this uncompressed. If you try doing this with a compressed video, your results may vary. We'll also do this with the closer up shot. Again, 21 and 22 are the duplicates, and removing those removes the freeze. We can now add these. And let's try stepping through again. As you can see, the freeze has disappeared and the videos appear to be in sync. I'm not detecting any obvious manipulation of the arm on its way down. The one thing to note is that there is a lot of blur and looks like some sort of interpolation, as if the source material for this was either interlaced or a lower frame rate. But every 2 steps, where you'll have a single frame rather than the interpolation of the two, everything seems to check out. I should at this point mention another video that claims to show that Sanders' posted video was manipulated. And this is by Raphael Shumanov. Again, hopefully I've pronounced the name correctly. What happens in this video is interesting because it performs a kind of diff algorithm on the 2 videos. You can see here there's some ghosting in red, and Shumanov explains that the red video, or the parts that are red, come from the Sanders video, whereas the normal scene is the original C-SPAN. The one thing that surprises me about this video is that if we go back to the beginning, we look at the intern's left hand, and we can see where the shadow is predicting where the hand will go. And as we move the frames, I would have expected the hand to be much closer to the shadow. When we looked before at the comparison, we found that we were only 2 frames out as a maximum at any given time. So if the differences are being calculated against a time after the 2 duplicate frames, then we would expect to be at most 2 frames behind. But this is not what we see. Five frames later, the hand is still moving up, whereas in the very first frame, the shadow has already started moving left. The shadow of the hand appears here. 6 frames later, the hand actually appears. This is far too long a lag, considering that we're only going to lose 2 frames, or rather, the C-SPAN video will only gain 2 frames when the shadow stops as the hand contacts the arm. This is shown several times in close-up, but the problem appears to remain. The shadow of the hand is appearing here. The hand appears 4 frames later here, possibly 5, depending on when you consider the shadow to be in the correct position. The interpolation blur when performing a diff makes this a little bit more difficult to judge, but it's certainly no less than 4. On the super close-up, again, if we 4 frames there, again, this repeats a few times. And it's more than 2 frames behind. Interestingly, you can actually find the moment where the shadow stops moving. but the original video never catches up, as you would expect. It appears that this video was put together with the sync simply wrong. Shiminov, in his tweet, said that he had 15 plus years of video editing experience. Perhaps he needed a bit more. But all this still leaves the question: why is there a 2-second freeze in the Sanders video? And I think I have an answer, or at least a possible answer. As we step through, the super close-up in the Sanders video ends early. However, in the other shot, we see that there is another 2-frame freeze. Interestingly, this freeze happens exactly 40 frames after the last one ended. We can look at this. The first freeze in the unfixed version happens at frame 20. Frames 21 and 22 are the duplicate frames. 40 frames on from 22, we have our last good frame before we have 2 more freeze frames. So the obvious question here is, what happens at frame 104? Unfortunately, this is the moment where the cut happens, and so we don't actually see what the next frame is. So I tried again, going from the beginning. This is the Sanders video with the initial section and the first close-up, and then a very quick cut to the beginning of the second closer up. My first question was, does this freeze exist in this section? And the answer is, yes, it does. It happens on frame 20 to 22, 62 to 64, and when you get to frame 104, you get a freeze frame and then a cut. The cut happens in exactly the wrong place to be certain about why frame 105 is a duplicate. You could argue that this is an artifact of the fact that the cut is happening. But we can then also check this first close-up. In this video, frames 127 and 128 are duplicates. As are 169 and 170. When we get to frame 210, again, 211 is a duplicate and 212 is the cut. So it appears we have a bit of a pattern. From the beginning of the shot or the clip, 20 frames elapse, then 2 duplicates appear. 40 frames elapse, 2 more duplicates appear. 40 frames elapse, and what appears to be a duplicate appears before the clip ends. And this appears in both the standard shot and the first close-up. None of the super close-ups go on long enough to see if a second duplicate appears there, but I see no reason why it wouldn't. So the question is, where are these duplicates coming from? The fact that there appears to be a pattern suggests that this is some sort of processing artifact. While it could be argued that someone might want to place some duplicate frames around here, there is no real reason to be placing duplicate frames here. When challenged on the video, Watson said that he acquired the video from the Daily Wire Twitter feed. And we can have a look at this. The Daily Wire's video was posted as a GIF, so it has a much lower frame rate, approximately 14.6 frames per second. And so as you step through, you expect to see a frame roughly once every other frame, as we are still in 30 frames in our project. So going from the beginning, let's see what happens as we step through this GIF. I'm not sure if you can hear my key presses as I step through, but so far every frame has appeared as expected every other frame. Now, possibly here you might expect to see some sort of delay, but it doesn't happen. This continues as normal. But here, I actually have to press 3 times to get to the next frame. Then every other frame continues until here. In this case, I actually have to go through 4 30 frame per second frames to get to the next image. This transition from this image to this image is 3 frames. From here on out, everything appears normally. At this point, OpenShot simply stops rendering any more of this video, so I don't know whether any other oddness could be seen. If we examine the GIF itself in VirtualDub, every frame appears to flow smoothly. That is until frame 44, which we couldn't see in OpenShot for some reason, where 45 and 46 are duplicates. 45 is a normal frame, 46 is a duplicate. Interestingly enough, no iteration of the Sanders video shows this duplicate. It appears to get dropped. One last thing that I tried. And I don't have it in my list, was I used VirtualDub to attempt an interpolation from the original 14.6 frames per second to the normal 29.97 that the original videos are in. this appeared to work relatively cleanly. I don't see any freezes or dropped frames or duplicate frames here. With the exception of this one, which is the one that actually exists in the original. Interestingly, I have to step through 3 frames in order to move past it. And that's that. My only other comment is that I'm not entirely sure how adding frames is meant to accelerate the movement. Normally when you would want to accelerate a moving image, you would do so by removing frames, so that the later images appear quicker, or at least appear earlier. It's not clear to me how adding 2 frames before the movement would achieve that. If anything, I would expect it to make it appear slightly slower. So all in all, I don't think there's any real evidence to say that this was deliberately manipulated. There is an artifact that appears that could very well be a consequence of the software. Could be a software bug. Could be anything really. And the change that it does make does not appear to be conducive to the effects that people are claiming of it. I think that's all I have to say about that.